The marble lobby of Sterling and Associates Marketing felt colder than usual that Tuesday morning in October. I walked through those glass doors one final time, my leather portfolio tucked under my arm, containing everything Marcus Sterling thought he owned but never actually understood. The receptionist, Claire, looked up with the same practiced smile she'd worn for 3 years, but this time her eyes held something different: anticipation. "I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss." "Good morning, Ms. Chen," she said, her voice carrying just a hint of curiosity. "Good morning, Claire." I paused at the reception desk, pulling out a crisp white envelope. "Could you make sure Marcus gets this? It's my official notice." Her eyebrows lifted slightly as she accepted the letter. Before she could respond, the elevator chimed, and Marcus Sterling himself emerged, coffee in hand, that familiar swagger in his step that had intimidated junior staff for years. But not me. Not anymore. "Elena," he called out, his voice booming, across the lobby. "Perfect timing. I was just telling the board about your campaign metrics. Solid work, as always." I turned to face him, my expression calm, measured. "Thank you, Marcus. I'm sure you presented them beautifully." He approached with that practiced grin, the one he wore in client meetings when he was about to take credit for someone else's breakthrough. "You know me too well. But hey, that's what teamwork is all about, right?" His eyes fell to the envelope, in Claire's hands. "What's that?" "My resignation," I said simply. "Effective immediately." The coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. For just a moment, his confident facade cracked, revealing something I'd never seen before: genuine surprise. Then the laugh came, deep and condescending, echoing off the marble walls. "Resignation?" He set down his coffee and crossed his arms. "Elena, Elena, Elena, you think you're going to find something better out there?" He gestured toward the glass doors as if the outside world was some barren wasteland. "You'll never find better than what you have here. This industry is brutal. And without Sterling and Associates behind you, you're just another freelancer fighting for scraps." I adjusted my portfolio, feeling the weight of everything inside it. Years of strategy documents, client relationship maps, proprietary methodologies that bore my signature, not his. "We'll see about that." His laugh grew louder, more theatrical. 6 months, he said, holding up his fingers. "I give you 6 months before you come crawling back, asking for your old job. And you know what? I might even consider taking you back. At entry level, of course." The lobby had grown quiet. A few junior associates had gathered near the elevator bank, pretending to check their phones while listening to every word. I could see Claire gripping the envelope tighter, her knuckles white. 6 months, I repeated, my voice steady as steel. "Remember that timeline, Marcus. You might find it interesting." I walked toward the glass doors, my heels clicking rhythmically against the marble. Just before pushing through to the street, I turned back one final time. Marcus stood frozen in the middle of the lobby, his confident grin fading as he watched me leave. "Oh, and Marcus," I called out. "Check your email in about an hour. You'll want to see what I've been working on in my spare time." The glass doors closed behind me, muffling his confused response. For the first time in 8 years, I breathed the morning air as a free woman, carrying with me not just my resignation, but the seeds of what would become his biggest nightmare. 8 years. That's how long I'd been the invisible engine behind Sterling and Associates' most successful campaigns. It didn't happen overnight, this slow erosion of credit, this gradual theft of recognition. It began innocuously enough, with Marcus making small adjustments to my presentations before client meetings. "Just polishing the delivery," he'd say, adding his flourishes to my strategic frameworks. "You're brilliant with the technical stuff, Elena, but clients need to hear it in a language they understand." The first time was the Morrison Hotels campaign. I'd spent 3 months developing a revolutionary approach to experiential marketing, turning hotel lobbies into immersive brand storytelling spaces. The concept was so innovative that it redefined how hospitality brands thought about customer engagement. When Marcus presented it to Morrison's board, he called it our breakthrough approach, carefully avoiding any mention of its true architect. The campaign won 14 industry awards. Marcus's photo appeared in Marketing Weekly as Visionary of the Year. My name appeared in the fine print of the project credits, buried among a list of contributing team members. I told myself it was normal. That's how agencies worked. The senior partner got the spotlight, the junior staff got the experience. But I wasn't junior staff anymore. I had an MBA from Wharton, 8 years of proven results, and a track record of campaigns that had generated over $200 million in client revenue. Yet, somehow, I was still sitting in the same glass-walled office, watching Marcus climb higher on the ladder I'd built for him. The pattern became a ritual. I'd develop the strategy, conduct the research, create the innovative frameworks that clients desperately needed. Marcus would review my work, make superficial changes, then present it as his own vision. The media interviews, the conference speaking, slots, the industry recognition, all of it flowed to him while I remained the unnamed genius behind the curtain. But the files on my computer told a different story. Every late-night brainstorming session, every client insight, every revolutionary approach was documented, time-stamped, and saved. I'd developed a habit of emailing myself drafts, creating a digital paper trail that showed the true evolution of each campaign. Not out of paranoia, but out of professional diligence. In an industry where ideas were currency, documentation was survival. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday in September. I was working late, as usual, when I decided to grab a coffee from the break room. As I passed Marcus's office, I heard him on a conference call with the board, his voice carrying through the half-open door. The Zenith Tech rebranding strategy is nearly complete, he was saying. I've been developing a disruptive approach that will revolutionize how B2B companies think about digital identity. The framework I've created integrates psychological triggers with data-driven personalization in ways no one has attempted before. I stopped walking. The Zenith Tech strategy was mine. Every concept, every psychological insight, every data integration model. I'd been working on it for 4 months, had presented the initial framework to Marcus just that morning. Now he was describing it to the board as his own breakthrough innovation. The beauty of my approach, he continued, is that it doesn't just rebrand the company. It rebuilds their entire customer relationship paradigm. I call it neural brand architecture. And honestly, I think it's the most innovative work I've done in my career. Neural brand architecture. The term I'd coined 3 weeks ago, tested with focus groups, refined through countless iterations. He was even using my exact terminology. I stood there in the hallway, invisible as always, listening to him steal not just my work, but my words, my concepts, the very language I'd created to describe revolutionary ideas that had kept me awake for months. That night, I went home to my small apartment and opened my laptop. I pulled up the Zenith files, the Morrison files, 3 years of campaigns that had put Sterling and Associates on the map. For the first time, I really looked at them, not as projects I'd completed, but as a portfolio I'd unknowingly built for someone else. The revelation wasn't anger. It was clear. I wasn't building a career at Sterling and Associates. I was building Marcus's career while mine remained frozen in time, trapped in the same glass office with the same title I'd held for 3 years. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. I opened a new document and began typing. Not a resignation letter, not yet. Something more important. A business plan. By 3 a.m., I had outlined the framework for Catalyst Creative Group, a boutique marketing agency built on principles Marcus had never understood. transparency, attribution, and genuine partnership with clients. Over the next 6 weeks, I worked in secret. During lunch breaks, I researched market opportunities. On weekends, I developed proprietary methodologies that improved on everything I'd created at Sterling. I reached out to former clients who had specifically requested to work with me again, only to be told that Marcus handles all client relationships. Personally, the responses were illuminating. 3 major clients admitted they had specifically wanted me to lead their next campaigns. 2 had been disappointed when Marcus showed up to meetings instead of the brilliant strategist who developed their previous work. 1 had nearly switched agencies entirely before being convinced to stay by Marcus's promise that I would be deeply involved in their next project. I began documenting these conversations, building a client interest list that painted a clear picture. The market didn't just want what I could create, it wanted me specifically to create it. But the final piece of evidence came accidentally. I was organizing old files when I discovered a folder Marcus had forgotten to encrypt on the shared drive. Inside were his speaking proposals for industry conferences, complete with detailed descriptions of his methodologies. Every single innovation was mine. The Morrison Hotel strategy, the Zenith Tech framework, even approaches I'd developed for smaller clients, all of it packaged and pitched as Marcus Sterling's original thinking. There were email chains with conference organizers, keynote outlines, and even fee negotiations, all centered around intellectual property I had created. The folder also contained something else, a draft email to the board, dated just 2 weeks prior. The subject line read, "Succession Planning and Resource Optimization." I opened it with trembling fingers. As Sterling and Associates continues to grow, we need to optimize our human resources for maximum efficiency. Elena Chen has been a valuable contributor, but her role has become redundant as I've taken on more direct strategic responsibility. I recommend transitioning her to a junior associate position or exploring severance options that would allow us to bring in fresh talent at a lower cost structure. Redundant. After 8 years of building his reputation, developing his signature approaches, generating millions in revenue, I had become redundant in the very systems I had created. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness of my apartment, not with despair, but with the crystalline focus of someone who finally understood the game that had been played around her. Marcus thought he owned my work, my relationships, my future in the industry. What he didn't realize was that for 8 years, I hadn't just been building campaigns. I'd been building expertise, reputation, and skills that existed completely independent of Sterling and Associates. More importantly, I'd been documenting everything. Every client conversation, every strategy session, every innovative framework was saved, time-stamped, and attributed. While Marcus had been performing, I had been preparing. The next morning, I began the final phase of my preparation. I reached out to 5 key clients who had worked with me directly, not to poach them, but to inform them of my departure and offer transition support. Their responses were immediate and unanimous. They wanted to know where I was going next. Scheduled meetings with 3 of Marcus's biggest competitors, not to ask for jobs, but to explore partnership opportunities. They'd been watching Sterling and Associates rise with interest, trying to understand what made us so innovative. When I walked into those meetings and explained that the us had really been me, the conversations shifted from polite interest to serious negotiation. But I wasn't looking for employment. I was looking for validation that the market I intended to enter was real, substantial, and ready for disruption. By the time I walked into Marcus's office to resign, I wasn't just leaving Sterling and Associates. I was stepping into a future I'd been building in secret for 6 weeks, armed with client interest, industry connections, and 8 years of experience that nobody could take away from me. The resignation letter in my portfolio wasn't just notice of departure. It was a declaration of independence. The hour after I left Sterling and Associates, I sent Marcus the email I'd promised. not out of spite, but out of professional necessity. The subject line was simple: Catalyst Creative Group, official launch. Announcement. Inside was a single paragraph and a link. Marcus, thank you for 8 years of learning opportunities. As promised, I wanted to share what I've been working on in my spare time. The industry is about to get very interesting. Best of luck with your redundancy optimization plans. Elena. The link led to a professionally designed website for Catalyst. Creative Group, complete with case studies of my work, properly attributed this time, testimonials from clients who had specifically requested my involvement in their campaigns, and a manifesto about transparent, accountable marketing that put strategists' names on their innovations. My phone started ringing within 20 minutes. The first call was from Jennifer Morrison, CEO of Morrison Hotels. Elena, I just saw your announcement. We've been hoping to work with you directly for months. When can we meet? The second was from David Chen at Zenith Tech. That neural brand architecture framework was yours all along, wasn't it? We want you to implement Phase 2 personally. By noon, I had 3 client meetings scheduled for the following week and 2 partnership inquiries from agencies that wanted to collaborate rather than compete. Marcus didn't call until that evening. When his name appeared on my phone, I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. Elena. His voice was tight, controlled. We need to talk. I think we said everything we needed to say this morning. About your website. Some of those case studies might present intellectual property concerns. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. Which case studies specifically? The Morrison campaign, the Zenith strategy. Those were developed under Sterling and Associates' umbrella. Interesting? I pulled out my laptop, opening the files I'd prepared for exactly this conversation. I have the original strategy documents right here. Every single one shows my personal email as the author, time-stamped weeks before any Sterling and Associates presentations. I also have the client communication logs showing direct requests to work with me personally. Silence on the other end. Marcus, did you actually read the documentation I kept, or did you just assume I was too naive to protect my own work? This is unethical, Elena. You can't just... Can't what? Can't take credit for my own innovations. Can't pursue clients who specifically requested my services. Can't start a business using skills I developed independently? My voice remained calm, professional. Which part of that violates any agreement I signed with Sterling and Associates? Another pause, longer this time. You won't last 6 months, he said finally, his earlier confidence cracking into something more desperate. You don't understand the business side, the client relationships, the industry politics. You're a strategist, not an entrepreneur. You might be right, I said. I guess we'll find out in 6 months, won't we? I hung up and returned to work. There was a pitch deck to finish for Morrison Hotels, a partnership agreement to review with, a data analytics firm, and 3 job interviews to conduct for the strategists I was planning to hire, all of whom had reached out to me after seeing colleagues share my launch announcement on LinkedIn. The industry response was swift and telling. Marketing Weekly reached out for an interview about the trend toward attribution transparency in creative agencies. 2 conference organizers invited me to speak about innovative approaches to B2B rebranding, the exact topics Marcus had been pitching as his own expertise just weeks earlier. But the most satisfying response came from Claire, Sterling and Associates, former receptionist who called me 3 days after my launch. Elena, I hope it's okay that I'm reaching out. I put in my notice yesterday, and I was wondering, are you hiring administrative support? What made you decide to leave? She laughed, but she wasn't entirely happy. After you left, Marcus called an all-hands meeting. He spent 20 minutes explaining how Sterling and Associates had evolved beyond needing specialists, and how the company's success came from his ability to synthesize various inputs into cohesive strategic vision. Then he announced that he'd be taking over all client strategy personally to ensure consistent quality. How did the team react? Half of them started updating their LinkedIn profiles during the meeting. 3 people have quit since Tuesday. And honestly, watching him take credit for your work while you were here was bad enough. Watching him do it after you'd already exposed him just felt pathetic. I hired Claire the next day, not just because she was good at her job, but because she understood something Marcus never had: that success built on lies eventually collapses under the weight of its own contradictions. 6 weeks after launch, Catalyst Creative Group had signed 4 major clients, partnered with 2 complementary agencies, and established a reputation for innovative strategies that put the actual strategists' names on their work. Our attribution. Transparency model became a case study that other agencies began adopting. The real validation came when Morrison Hotels invited me to speak at their annual brand summit. The venue was the Grand Ballroom at the Meridian Hotel, the same location where Marcus had accepted his Visionary of the Year award 18 months earlier. I stood at the podium, looking out at an audience of CMOs, brand directors, and industry leaders who had seen my work for years without knowing my name. This time was different. "My name is Elena Chen," I began, "and I'm the strategist who developed what you've known as Sterling & Associates' signature methodologies." A murmur of recognition rippled through the room. Today, I want to talk about what happens when innovation gets the attribution it deserves. I clicked to my first slide, the Morrison Hotels campaign, shown exactly as I had originally envisioned it, with my name clearly listed as lead strategist. This campaign generated a 340% increase in direct bookings and won 14 industry awards. I continued, but more importantly, it proved that guests don't just book hotels, they book experiences that align with their personal narratives. I walked through the psychological insights, the data integration models, the innovative frameworks that had redefined experiential marketing. This time, I used the technical language I'd developed, not the simplified versions Marcus had preferred. The audience leaned forward, taking notes, asking detailed questions that revealed their genuine interest in the methodology behind the magic. When I finished, the applause wasn't polite conference politeness. It was the recognition of peers who finally understood the source of innovations they'd been trying to replicate for years. During the networking break, I was approached by executives from 5 major brands, 2 investment firms interested in agency partnerships, and 3 journalists who wanted to interview me about the attribution transparency movement that was reshaping agency culture. But the conversation that mattered most came from Marcus himself. I was reviewing my notes near the back of the ballroom when I felt a presence behind me. I turned to find Marcus standing awkwardly, his usual confidence replaced by something I'd never seen before: humility. "Elena." His voice was quiet, almost hoarse. "That was impressive. Thank you." He shifted his weight, looking older than I remembered. "I heard that your client wins. Morrison, Zenith, Pacific Dynamics. That's significant business." "It is." A long pause stretched between us. The ballroom buzzed with conversations around us, but our corner felt isolated, heavy with 8 years of unspoken tension. "I want you to know," he said finally, "that I never intended for things to go the way they did. The credit, the recognition, it wasn't supposed to become what it became." I studied his face, looking for the manipulation I'd grown accustomed to, but finding only what appeared to be genuine regret. What was it supposed to become? Partnership. Real partnership. "You were always the most talented strategist I'd worked with. I thought if I could get the industry to pay attention to our work, to your work, then we could build something significant together." By erasing my name from my own innovations, he flinched. By positioning the agency for growth, I told myself that once we were established, once we had the reputation and the client base, there would be room for both of us at the top. There was always room, Marcus. You just never made any. Another pause. Around us, the networking session was winding down, people checking phones and gathering business cards. You were right about the 6 months, he said quietly. Sterling and Associates lost 3 major clients last quarter. 2 of them specifically asked to work with you. When I told them you'd left to start your own agency, they congratulated me on finally letting Elena spread her wings. I felt a flicker of something, not satisfaction exactly, but closure. The industry figured it out faster than I expected, he continued. Turns out when you remove the person who actually creates the innovation stops happening. What are you going to do? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I remembered from our early brainstorming sessions when he was still Marcus the colleague instead of Marcus the boss. Rebuild, I guess. Start over with transparency this time. Maybe figure out how to actually innovate instead of just presenting other people's innovation. That's not impossible, I said. You have good business instincts when you're not trying to take credit for other people's creativity. He looked surprised by the concession. But it will require something you never learned how to do, I continued. It will require admitting what you don't know and giving credit where it's actually due. Marcus nodded slowly, then extended his hand. I know this doesn't fix anything, but I want to say it officially. You were the best strategist I ever worked with, and I'm sorry I didn't say that when it mattered. I shook his hand, not because I'd forgiven him, but because holding on to anger would have been more exhausting than letting it go. Good luck with the rebuild, Marcus. As I walked away, I felt the weight of 8 years lifting from my shoulders. Not because of his apology, but because I no longer needed it. I had built something better than the recognition he'd withheld. I had built a business where recognition flowed naturally to the people who earned it. 6 months after that conversation, in the lobby of Sterling and Associates, Catalyst Creative Group was featured on the cover of Marketing Weekly as Agency of the Year. The story inside detailed our revolutionary approach to transparent attribution and included interviews with clients who praised our collaborative methodology. In the group photo, my name appeared exactly where it belonged, at the center, clearly. Visible, impossible to miss. Behind me stood my team of 6 strategists, each one credited by name for their specific innovations and contributions. The article mentioned Sterling and Associates only once, in a sidebar about traditional agency, models that prioritize individual recognition over collaborative innovation. Marcus wasn't quoted, but I was. The final paragraph of the story included a quote that became something of a manifesto for the new agency model we were pioneering. The most powerful thing you can give a creative professional isn't money or promotion, it's attribution. When people see their names on their work, when their innovations are credited properly, when their expertise is recognized publicly, they don't just do better work, they do their best work. And when an entire industry starts operating that way, everyone benefits. The magazine arrived on a Thursday morning. I was reading it in my office, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city, when Claire knocked on my door. Elena, there's someone here to see you. No appointment, but she says it's about joining the team. I looked up to see a young woman in her 20s, professional but nervous, clutching a portfolio that looked remarkably familiar. My name is Sarah Kim, she said, stepping into my office. I've been working at Sterling and Associates for 2 years as a junior strategist. Yesterday, Marcus presented my campaign framework to a client as his own innovation. Again, she opened her portfolio, revealing documentation that mirrored what I had carried in my own leather case 6 months earlier. Timestamps, original drafts, client communications, and a paper trail of stolen attribution. I saw your Marketing Weekly interview, she continued, and I realized something. I don't have to accept this. I can build something better, somewhere that understands the difference between collaboration and theft. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Tell me about your framework. As Sarah walked me through her innovative approach to social commerce integration, I saw myself 8 years ago, brilliant, dedicated, and hungry for the recognition that should have been automatic, but somehow remained elusive. The difference was, this time, she wouldn't have to wait 8 years to get it. "When can you start?" I asked. Her smile lit up the entire office. "How about tomorrow?" 6 months later, Sarah Kim was presenting her social commerce framework at the Digital Marketing Innovation Summit, her name clearly displayed on every slide, her bio prominently featured in the conference program. She was 26 years old and already being recognized as one of the industry's rising strategic minds. During her presentation, she mentioned her inspiration. "I learned from Elena Chen at Catalyst Creative Group that the best innovations come from environments where creativity is celebrated openly, not hidden behind someone else's ambition." Watching from the audience, I felt the satisfaction that Marcus had spent years chasing but never quite achieved. Not because I was being recognized, though I was, but because I had created something that multiplied recognition instead of hoarding. After the conference, I checked my phone to find a text from an unknown number. "Saw Sarah's presentation today. Brilliant work. You're building something special there." "Marcus," I typed back. "She's building something special. I'm just making sure she gets credit for it." His response came quickly. "That's probably the difference." I deleted the conversation and put my phone away. There was a team dinner to attend, strategy sessions to prepare for Monday, and 3 new client pitches to review. Catalyst Creative Group was growing faster than I'd projected, attracting talent that other agencies couldn't keep and clients who wanted to work with strategists, whose names they actually knew. But the real measure of success wasn't in the revenue numbers or the industry recognition. It was in the small moments, Sarah confidently presenting her work under her own name, junior strategists staying late not out of obligation but out of excitement, clients calling to specifically request the person who had developed their strategy. It was in building a place where "you'll never find better" wasn't a threat used to keep people small, but a reality created by giving them room to grow. 6 months had become 2 years. Marcus's prediction had been wrong about almost everything except one detail. I never did find anything better than what I had. I built it instead. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now, and hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.